Hey guys, this is Bane. Welcome back to So You Want to Main Science, and we are looking at our setup most recently for our sort of latest build, if you like, on things like that. I've just noticed there's a few I've changed a few things, and of course it's doubled it up, and I need to get rid of things there, but we'll fix that. We'll fix that. So what's going on with me? Basically, I've changed around certain officers and abilities and various things recently, but I wanted to kind of go through in this episode about the general UI. So you can rearrange your HUD at any time via this button here, and here's all your HUD and targets and targets and targets. Team status is really important to me because I want it down so I can see it in case I need to throw some heals out. Well, let's go over the basics. The point that I'd like to make first of all is it depends on what missions you're doing. So the first thing you always want to do if you're playing a science ship is lock, and you can unlock and lock, and this is obviously set up. You can change all these setups here. I just want to show you this. You've got all the reduced kind of setups, but the one I prefer is setup number 3, which shows you the actual bars because you can actually lock power level settings in. Generally, if you're in PvP and playing PvP regularly, you tend not to worry as a science ship about your weapon power. You tend to lock both your auxiliary and engines as far as they can be, so you can get around, because if you fail to move in PvP, you are dead. In other ways, if you're in PvE, you may lock if you're having a match where you're not feeling that you're gonna die from anything in particular. If you're just doing some normal missions, then you may lock it so that your weapons are also high, and that you're not too worried about shields, or maybe you're not having a good time with it and you want to lock your shields up. But notice that you can lock these, and then your power, it will always try to keep these at the levels that's set. The green here obviously is our bonus power that's being applied, and you can see those numbers reflected as you hover over. But auxiliary, generally want to keep our auxiliary up because this is the lifeblood. This energy here is our lifeblood to our science ship and the skills and abilities that we have. If you guys are frantically trying to write down all these abilities I might have here to know what Bane is up to, do not do that, because we are going to be covering it, as I said, in a later episode. For now though, we just want to talk about some of the offensive abilities we have. You notice that the ship I'm in, this is a temporal ship. This is one of the best ships you can probably get, along with some of the more rarer ships, such as the sphere builder ships of science, but I just find the temporal ships give you a nice little edge, as does the temporal operative. Again, something we'll go over another time, and how that particularly helps science. Temporal is really powerful as a build for science. But let's have a look at what we get out of just being temporal as well. We have obviously this new bar here and gives us configurations. Obviously, the one we want to run in is the support configuration. That maxes auxiliary power. It gives us plus exotic damage. It gives us plus control strength. It does take away from our energy weapon damage, but who cares, because we're not going to be running energy weapons. That's right, you heard me right. We're mainly going to be running torpedoes because they don't require power, and so we don't have to worry too much. But you'll notice that this gives you plus 20% exotic damage. Now, remember what I said in the first episode, our build is all based on EPG, or exotic power damage. If you're doing PvP, we're all about also about controlling the enemies as well, and the same with PvE. Plus 40 control expertise is very helpful. We get these support counters, which eventually will allow us to fire this molecular deconstruction beam, and you can see that this is a scaling physical dot. It heals whole, it's a disable, but basically to the enemy it does a certain amount of damage, and it ignores shields as well, so that's quite nice. And it scales obviously with the number of offensive counters it consumes. To yourself, it obviously gives you a whole heal, that's always helpful, and to the foe it disables for 3 seconds as well. So again, it does a bit of a disable. It consumes all offensive, defensive, support counters. So all these counters here, you probably will never ever change other than using support configuration. That's what you should be using. The interesting thing is the control amplification. So if we are amplifying, you can see that there is minus 25 exotic damage resistance for 10 seconds and minus 25 control resistance. this is really, really good, because that control amplification means that we're going to be doing more damage to them from our exotic abilities. You can also see that after using a whole or shield heal, we get plus 10% exotic damage as well. That's the control amplification in practice. And we also will replace each other. So basically what that means is as we do something, it will replace the other effect. So after we use an exotic damage, we get 10% increased whole and shield healing. Well, effectively what that means is we want to be healing after we've done our exotic damage, and we want to be doing exotic damage after we've done our healing, and vice versa. So it's good to get into a cycle. Obviously I don't want you guys to get too focused on that, because generally if you're just letting it run, and I'll show you how, what I mean, it will generally pay dividends anyway. But you want to try and boost as much damage as you can. This is a nice way to do it if you're running a temporal ship, and I do fully recommend this particular exotic ship. It's one of the better ones. It's very, very nice to play. It even comes with some Hanapets, so we can launch our Hanapets. I'm running Yellowstone runabouts because I just like to be even more evil than normal. My runabouts do lots of nice things, but we'll go over that in a gear video later on. But yeah, it's quite a good all-round thing, and the pets obviously help me in sometimes taking aggro as well off targets that I'm not currently engaging. So again, what I've done, you can see all my weapons are on auto fire. I've actually triggered it to X, so that when I hit the X key, it will start my weapon cycles off, and then it'll just auto fire along. My spacebar is not triggered to firing weapons because that causes issues with some of my cycling. But what I will show you is all my bars. So as you can see, you can increase the amount of bars visually you have. So in this case I've got 4. If I show you my 7th bar, I have in my 7th bar lots of abilities, and you're probably wondering why, Bane, why do you have abilities in your 7th bar all the way up there that you can't see? Because I have a script that runs. I've bound to my space bar, and I have a little bit of a text file inside my game folder. Again, we can show you that there is a guide to that as well called Hilbert's Guide, which goes through binding fins mainly for PvPers, but a lot of people don't realise you can do that. You can bind fins to your spacebar, and in case when I hit these, what it does is, you can see if I'm hitting my spacebar, it's actually activating all my abilities, launching my fighters for me. And what it is doing is it's triggering things like tactical team, and it does it in priority order. So that's the thing. That's why tactical team is first, then torpedo spread, and then my shield boost. So I'm triggering all of these effects that I wanted to trigger, and I'm also doing things like I've just stuck in some targeting weapon subsystems and targeting shield subsystems and launching my Yellowstone runabouts. So every time I'm hitting, my weapons are auto firing. So when I'm hitting spacebar, I'm actually focusing on all these important buffs here. Things I don't really want to worry about, like when I'm always going to use torpedo spread when it's available based on the torpedoes I have. That's basically what's going to be happening. Okay, so that's why it's bound. So then I can hide that tray. I don't have to worry about it. I know that it's going to carry on going off as long as I hit space. You can see that happening. So very, very simple. Can have my spacebar, but not to fire my weapons like most people think. That's not bound to that. Instead, if I hit the X key, what will happen is it will actually fire my torpedoes. I've bound my fire weapons to the X key as well, so I can trigger. If my weapons don't trigger, it's up to me when I want to fire my weapons. Sometimes I don't want to fire my weapons. It depends what I'm up to. So different triggers for different things. Generally, these bars are pretty easy to organise. You should try and arrange the abilities in the order that you want to activate them along your bar. So you need to think very carefully about how things are. You can see that I've got my 1, 2, 3. So these are my keys up here. Generally, I can reach all of them with my fingers. If you've got one of those fancy keyboards, you can obviously assign these differently. But these are the ones I want to be getting off. The most important one for a science player, obviously, is to think about your sensor analysis, because what this will do is this will give you either a healing stack on your friend or to your foe. Their heals are halved. It will also give you bonus damage, and you can see how many times it stacks to give you bonus damage, for example. So even the tooltip is pretty obvious in what it does. Sensor analysis gives you bonus effectiveness versus its target the longer it is locked on them, while sensor analysis is active if your cloak is disabled. But we're not cloaking, so it doesn't really matter to us in that sense. But it's nice because that's what you want to try and keep up as a priority. So I've set it to number 1 just so I remember to keep it up. That's also increasing my damage the longer I have it on a target. A lot of my activator abilities are obviously up the top. Things I don't care about, like if I want to use my metaphasic shields, I will. They're not necessarily the best shields, but I prefer this set. I just like the set bonuses on it. I've got a battery capacity here, which just repairs my disabled auxiliary systems. That doesn't happen that often because of my resistance, but it's there. And then you'll see other things along there as well. But all those kind of abilities at the top, and then general use abilities that I may just manually click depending on what I've got. I have got many, so I can alt these basically. These are all alt. So alt 1, 2, 3. So I can hold alt. It's not far from me and activate those abilities. These are all control abilities. So again, everything's within reach pretty easily for timing things in order. And I have some like things that I don't really use, but I do have things like threatening stance as well if I need to use it. Interesting bit about threatening stance, doesn't really matter in PvE because you're going to get shot because you're going to be doing so much damage, so it's always worth having a threatening stance. And it also gives you a chance when damage, you can see here, it gives you your maximum hull by 5%, and it can stack up to 10 times. So threatening stance is worth actually having on the side of ship, believe it or not. Don't try and think that you're not, that you'll get people tell you that they can tank out your damage, but in hindsight I've never seen that happen. The only people that can tend to tank out my damage is people that do more damage than me. So when I'm going out with like a Mega, who you've probably seen on the stream with me and his tactical escort, there's no way can I rip the aggro off him most of the time. It's very, very rare, so he tends to be the one that gets shot. Then threatening stance comes into play, I suppose, but I've never been able to nick his aggro. So again, I use it just because it gives me a buff in terms of staying alive again. So I wouldn't worry too much about threatening stance. You're going to say, oh, but only tanks are supposed to use that. But no, actually, because of what it does, you can find that it's actually pretty useful as you're going to have aggro a lot of the time anyway. And the reason you have aggro is you're doing area of effect damage, so you're going to be drawing lots of ships in PvE, and they're all going to be firing at you. Obviously, things change in PvP, but we'll talk about that another time later on in the series. So, pretty simple layout. Obviously, I watch this, that's my health bar, but I don't tend to watch it that harshly. Obviously, it's good to see in abilities and stuff like that. So that's my general layout. I do have the special icon. I could hide this actually, but you know, I've got some abilities there on the side. Again, I've got shift keys assigned to them. If I was in PvP mode, actually, I would have lots more down this side with like all special things that I can use, battery boost, stuff like that. But I don't really do that in PvE at the moment because PvE is pretty easy for me. I don't feel the need to do it. So that's the general UI setup. Obviously you guys all have different opinions from me. You might not agree with my UI setup, but this is the way I prefer to do it. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you do it a little bit differently, and we will do a guide on setting up keybinds in a different video another time. But that's my general setup for the layout of my ship. So I'll see you guys in the next episode where we start to go over some of the abilities. This is Bane as always, signing out.